Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to contribute to this relatively short though very necessary debate. And can I first say how encouraged I was to see the word social security actually appear in the order paper for this debate today, and to see it in the Annunciator, because over the years we seem to have sadly moved away from talking about social security to welfare and then latterly to benefits. And tempting though it is, I think I'll resist the temptation to lambast members of this House, particularly on the benches opposite, for the use of their words like scroungers and skivers and this kind of divide and conquer mentality that we see from the party opposite. I see they've broken up. But the title of today's debate today, as the honourable gentleman's chuntering from a sedentary position, does he want to intervene? No, perhaps not. But the title of today's debate is, I think, a good reminder to us. I'm more than happy to give way in
to intervene on him. Could he give the precise constituency of the member he suggested said the words that he used?
Chancellor, so I think it was Tatton. He now writes for the Evening Standard, so that's exactly who it is indeed. It wasn't so long ago that members opposite were charging away behind him and saying how wonderful he was. But whilst the benches opposite will chunter away, I will make progress with my speech. But the reason I rise to express my profound disappointment at the UK Government's continued obsession with the punitive benefits freeze is why I want to speak tonight, because as a constituency MP I'm acutely aware that the clear majority of people that I speak to at my surgeries on a Friday do not choose to be on benefits. Largely it would be circumstances that would dictate that, and broadly speaking people who end up receiving state support do so because they are disabled, because they are sick and because they are out of work. And contrary to what some right-wing newspapers print, being on benefits does not constitute a life of luxury. And if people outside or indeed in the benches opposite genuinely believe that, then they ought to go and study the annual statistics from the Trussell Trust that show quite clearly that the top three reasons why people use food banks are changes or delays in benefits, low income at work and insecure employment. And the charge for all three of them falls squarely at the door of this Tory government. Now, for the purposes of this debate, though, I shall stick predominantly to social security, and I know that my honourable friends from Inverness and Badenoch and Strathspey and North... I'm more than happy to give way to the honourable gentleman.
The honourable gentleman for giving way. He says that with great assurance that it all lies at the door of this government. In fact, since 2016, the Scottish Government have had powers to adjust, to top up, to change, to introduce new benefits, and in fact the Scottish Government, Madam Deputy Speaker, have done none of these things. The only thing they have done is they've made some changes to the way that universal credit can be changed. But they have the power at their disposal in the Scottish Government to be able to change the benefits package in Scotland. Why don't they do it?
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman for Stirling for that speech, and I perhaps want to have a glass of water after that. And I know often that Scottish Conservative members come to this chamber and act as these kind of Rottweilers that like to have a go at the Scottish Government. I think after a certain amount of time, members in the benches opposite will realise that they have been sent here from their constituencies to hold the United Kingdom government to account. Now, until that happens, I'm more than happy to debate with the honourable gentleman about the powers that the Scottish Government's taken on. No, you can sit down for a minute. But the powers that the Scottish Government are taking forward with social security, which is, I think, his remarks tonight are actually quite disappointing, because what we see in the Scottish Parliament, broadly speaking from the Conservative Party, is a good cross-party consensus moving forward. And I think the way that he stood up tonight and made that rather pathetic intervention is perhaps just a little bit of an insult towards his colleagues in the Scottish Conservative and Rate Clause Party. But as I say, as a constituency MP, I'm acutely aware that people do not choose to be on benefits. And I think what we need to see is a government that is willing to stand up and build a country that works for everyone. We can't have this just on the side of buses. And I think of, for example, the general election campaign. We were talking about building a country that works for everyone. If you're serious about building a country that works for everyone, that's got to be everyone. Now, I know that not everybody, the people in the benches opposite decide to denigrate and they decide to have a go at might not vote for them, but the reality is that they need to give them more support. I want to, because I'm conscious of time, and I want to give the Minister the opportunity to sum up as well. But I want to place on record my concern about the lack of support for the WASPI women. One of the first things that I did as an MP was bring forward a lot of the women in my constituency who have been unfairly impacted by this government's attack on women born in the 1950s. But in the remaining time I have, I want to issue a plea to the Government tonight to halt the rollout of universal credit in the City of Glasgow, to end the benefits freeze, and in particular to scrap the medieval and barbaric two-child policy. And before I entered this House, I worked for my honourable friend, I'm very glad to see she's here, the member for Glasgow Central, and she has doggedly pursued the Government over its barbaric rape clause and medieval two-child policy.
Barbaric. It's going to be fixed.
More than happy to give it, friend.
The honourable member raises the point about the rape clause, and members opposite had asked about MPs in this House who had said things that we wouldn't quite accept were right. And the honourable member for Mansfield said that people who should have vasectomies rather than have children because they are free. So would he agree that those kind of attitudes, that poor people are having hundreds of children just to scrounge in the state, are completely untrue as well as being unacceptable?
Very grateful to my honourable friend. I think that brings me on quite nicely to the next point. And I'm sure that the honourable gentleman opposite, who takes a keen interest in these matters, will be quite concerned about the whole idea that government policy is meant to go through a family test. And so for honourable gentlemen like the honourable gentleman from Mansfield to start suggesting that poor people should go and have vasectomies, I think is deeply, deeply worrying, and gives a real insight to the mindset of a Tory MP. Why not, Anil Barron?
Simple question. Does the honourable gentleman accept that the Scottish Government has now power over things like tax credits? And you haven't done anything with those powers in the Scottish Government. Sorry, I beg your pardon, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Scottish Government haven't done anything with those powers since 2016. So when they stand up and give these virtue signalling speeches about concern and compassion, they have the power, if they think something needs to be fixed, to fix it.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I must say that I'm quite entertained, at least, to the fact that the honourable gentleman from Stirling did not come tonight and is perhaps seeking to catch your eye to make a speech. He's instead decided he's going to try and use my speech as an opportunity to once again attack the Scottish Government. Now, the honourable gentleman must spend so much... He's not even listening, Madam Deputy Speaker, so I don't know if I should be continuing to address the point. But the point is that members from the Conservative Party in Scotland come to this House and they use the opportunity to rail against the Scottish Government as much as possible, yet he's absolutely no clue that tax credits are not being devolved to the Scottish Government. If he had spent any time in advance of this debate, even reading the order, he would know that that was the case. But despite widespread condemnation from every corner of the globe, including the United Nations, ministers on the Treasury bench have pursued the two-child policy which would frankly make China blush. Now, the Institute for Fiscal Studies have said that the two-child cap, which is tantamount to social engineering, will mean around 600,000 three-child families will lose £2,500 a year on average. That's families in Stirling losing £2,500 a year because of the policy of this government. That's not £2,500 a year on catalogues, gambling or lavish nights out. It's £2,500 a year that should go towards hot, nutritious meals for low-income families like the children in my constituency of Glasgow East. And the reality is that under this uncaring Tory government, we are watching child poverty go through the roof, whilst living standards go through the floor. Now, the other debate I am planning to take part on this week is on the issue of free school meals. Madam Deputy Speaker, 21st century Britain has now arrived at a point where, due to the sheer levels of poverty in our communities, the only place some children can get a hot, decent meal is at school. And only last week, MPs on all sides of this chamber voted to spend billions of pounds tarting up this royal palace so we can enjoy yet more luxury. Yet tonight, we are being asked by the Minister to support an order that would continue the benefit freeze for some of the most... No, I will not give way at this time. But that would give a benefit freeze to some of the most vulnerable people in our constituencies. And that is something that is fundamentally wrong, and I think it's time we called that out, and I think it's time for an end to the punitive benefit freeze.
Hear, hear.